A little bit of a different talk today. We had the same last week. We want to speak to taking your power back and how to take your power back. So we have Brittany Hammond streaming in from Paris, France, and we have Jordan Thomas streaming in from London, Ontario. Good morning, ladies.
Good
Morning.
morning.
Yeah. So Britt, I'm just going to forward to a couple pages and I'm going to let you start.
Okay, well, I'm excited to kick off this series called Take Your Power Back. And we are entering gala season. The Wallet to Wealth Gala is coming up November 15th. And we wanted to introduce a series because obviously it's one thing to raise money for Halton Women's Place, but also raising awareness and raising women up. So we're doing a series where we're interviewing different women talking about how they've taken their power back, how they've navigated some type of adversity, maybe a toxic or abusive relationship. And our goal is to kind of at the same time create a roadmap. So maybe if someone is watching this or listening to this and going through something similar and don't know the red flags or the signs, so we want to speak to that, but then also to the empowerment of how we actually elevate our identity and take our power back.
Love it. Awesome.
So we have Jordan here today. And Jordan, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what magic you bring to the world?
Yeah, thanks. What a great question. Well, it's really amazing to be here. My name is Jordan Thomas, and I live in London, Ontario. I have a lot of hats. I own a very large trauma therapy mental health clinic. It's called London Trauma Therapy, and we serve people all across Ontario in person and virtually with an incredible team of trauma therapists. And I also have a incredible success and mindset coaching program where I help ambitious entrepreneurs pretty much get what they want in life and learn to lead and serve in really big ways.
Amazing. Okay, can you, I know there's a specific story that you're going to be telling us about today. So can you kind of paint a picture of like what was your belief system growing up? Like tell us a little bit about
Oh,
what you went
Jordan.
About me.
Yeah.
through.
Yeah, so look, I'll start just by sharing that my intention on being here with you this morning is sort of twofold. And one is to really share parts of my story that I do hope might help another woman who might be currently in a situation that I found myself in. And the other part of why I wanted to join you this morning and was so excited to meet is to really inspire people to get involved with this amazing program because we really do recover. And when we help raise our sisters up, they go on to do incredible, amazing things. And so people really need to get involved. And I think a lot of times we can get really far removed from sort of that end result of where our dollars and our time and our energy and our resources are going. So I'm really hoping to share some of my story so it illuminates all of those little pieces. But, to go back to sort of who I am, and I grew up in an environment that was very hostile is really the only word for it, really traumatic. I had a lot of behavioral issues when I was a very young child, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And, if you're a parent or you have kids, you know that kids are just this vessel for environment and the behavior and the actions that we see from kids are often just cries for help. But I'm, getting a lot older. And in the 80s, there was no such thing as what's going on in the environment. It was just, oh, like here's the identified patient. And because I was, having these cries for help that were going really unnoticed around what was going on at home, I ended up getting removed from the school system. And I was put into an institutional school for children with, really serious adverse life circumstances. I mean, there were kids in there that, their parents had lit their house on fire with the kids in it. So really, really disturbed kids. But that was sort of the level of distress that I was in. And, that really started this cascade of this very deep-seated belief system that I was unloved, I was not enough, something was wrong with me, and I would not ever be accepted. You know, our greatest desire as humans is to be accepted and to be loved. And right from really young, I didn't feel that way. So, you know, I struggled. I really struggled all throughout school. I did not have a lot of friends. My behavior kind of, I would say, stabilized, but was never really good. I was kind of considered like the bad kid. I wasn't invited to birthday parties. People weren't all not allowed to come up to my house. And I remember just feeling that there was really something wrong with me and I was different from other people. And this was kind of the belief system that I took with me. Um, yeah, and I think, you know, in later years that sort of morphed for me from from feeling like I was a failure all the time to then wanting to create this perfect image of myself. I really wanted to be accepted and to be loved and to feel like I was good enough. And so I started overachieving. I channeled that kind of those cries for help from the behavior into obsessive perfectionism.
Wow.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of women can relate to that. That
Mhm.
obsessive perfectionism is what takes us down.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But we get rewarded for it as women. So
We do.
as women, we get really rewarded for looking the part and getting the A and going to the university and having, you know, we get rewarded for being as mainstream as we can possibly be. If when we
Mhm.
shrink ourselves into almost nothing, that's when we start to get really rewarded. And for someone like me who grew up with this profound sense of loneliness and alienation, uh, starting to get recognized and to be accepted was a drug right away because it was filling the hole in the soul.
Mm. So how did that then translate into romantic relationships for you?
So, you know, what I can tell you in my own journey and as a therapist and a coach is that our brain is this incredible sort of system that absolutely loves familiarity. And notice I don't say health, I don't say what's good for you, I don't say even what's comfortable, but I do use the word familiarity. And so when, you know, when I grew up in this environment that was so invalidating and hostile, and I had relationships with my caregivers that were chaotic and abusive and scary, what I very quickly started to find myself living over and over again was the exact same relationship, but in an intimate capacity. And what my nervous system was used to was abuse, was invalidation, neglect. And that's just what I knew. So I was doing all this, you know, stuff, but I was attracting and I was finding myself in relationships that were mimicking those early primary attachment relationships. And that
Mm.
is what happens because our attachment system is set up when we're so young.
Yeah. I I
That
talked
was
about
so well
this.
des that was so well described. Sorry, I just had to jump in. That was so well described. I mean, so many of us carry that. And that's so people wonder like, how the heck did this happen to me? If I speak from myself, I know better, I'm educated, all of these things. And then I end up in a women's shelter. How did that happen? And you just explained it perfectly.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying last year when I spoke at the Wallet to Wealth Gala. And in my experience, even though I went through therapy, like I don't know why no therapist was like, what's actually happening? What's actually happening in your home life? So I just got blamed my whole life for the bad behavior. Um, and I wish that like the knowledge that we have now, like the whole world needs to know this because you can like heal or stop in the tracks any like all of this toxicity in human relationships if you understand the different attachment styles and how that shows up because it shows up not just in romantic relationships, it shows up in friendships, it shows up in work settings. And it's like this is the dysfunction of the world, of the planet. Like I really truly believe that. So I love that you are able to articulate that. So how did that then lead into, I don't know if you were previously married or,
Yeah, I was.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I had it in my head that I would only be okay. I would only be somebody. I would only be healed, whole, normal. I would only be good if somebody else loved me. And I had this series of these, you know, chaotic, unhealthy relationships. Um, and as I started getting closer to 30, it started to become more and more almost desperate that I was going to be married. Because for me, in my head, you have to remember, I had a very, very, very isolated, dysfunctional, extraordinarily traumatic childhood. I had Children's Aid Society involved from, I can't remember them ever really not being around. And I remember, in my worst moments, laying in my bed thinking, one day I'm going to get somebody to marry me. We're going to have this white picket fence and everything's going to be just perfect. That's all I need. So in my adult years, as that timeline started to come, that was only imposed by myself, I started to panic. And I was coming from this place of such low self-worth. And I met this man, and God, I was on vacation. I was overseas. He barely spoke English. Yeah, I didn't speak Italian. And we met, and it was this chemistry, high intensity, sparks. And this is the other thing that I was used to because my nervous system was so dysregulated. Nice, calm. That felt threatening to me. But what I was really gravitated towards was these profound, big moments. And what we need to be really aware of, especially if you're a woman and you have this childhood trauma, you are wired for these high highs and low lows. And we mistake chemistry and passion as our soulmate. And actually, for the majority of us with childhood trauma, it's a red flag. It's way too familiar. But of course, I didn't know that. So I found myself in a relationship with this man who also had his own shit going on. And together we were like, fireworks. And I didn't even think twice about packing up my life to be with him.
Wow.
So what happened? In a
So we had
nutshell.
a long distance relationship, and there were so many red flags that I chose not to listen to. Because for me, I finally had somebody that said that they loved me, they wanted to be with me forever. I thought that his jealousy was romantic. I thought that his views on women were cultural. I, I permitted a lot of controlling behavior. He was also preoccupied with how I looked and my weight, and I thought that he loved me. And so I just, for me, this was all signs of love and ownership, and I liked it. And I don't know how much time we have or how deep you want to get into this, Brittany, but ultimately, the relationship started with a lot of control, financial control. I didn't have my own bank card. I didn't, I had to ask permission to spend money. He didn't want me to work. And then it was, didn't want me on the phone with my friends, or he would get mad and leave me and lock me in the apartment, started breaking my things. And eventually, all those pieces of aggression turned into physical violence.
Hmm. Is there a moment, like, so what was the moment where you drew a line in the sand, or what was the moment where you're like, okay, enough is enough?
I lost our first baby, and I had never experienced grief or pain or sorrow like that. And I was living overseas, and I was all on my own. And um and all of a sudden, it was really hard for me to ignore or to make excuses for the things that had been going on. But I want to tell you something really important that happened to me, because these abusive relationships, people always look at a woman and say, like, my God, like, why don't you just leave? But the problem is that there's a million little microaggressions that happen that don't feel like they're microaggressions before violence starts. And by the time that happens, you are already so disempowered and your sense of reality is so warped that you don't even know if there's abuse going on. And to really illustrate that, the time when I finally reached out for help was that we had gone out and we got into a fight, and there was this horrendous physical assault. And we were at a hotel and the security was called, and I woke up in the morning. There was blood all over my pillow. I had a black eye. I had a hematoma on the back of my neck and my jaw. And I had lost the hearing in my ear because my ear was so badly damaged. And my husband went to work on that Monday. I had gone to the doctor and all this stuff. And I called Canada's domestic violence helpline. I had to go to an ear specialist to try to get the hearing back in my ear. Okay, just to paint the picture. My question to the shelter hotline worker was, do you think that this is abuse? That is how warped I was. I have 2 master's degrees. I have a bachelor's with honors. I graduated at the top of my class with a bachelor in social work in 2005. And in 2012, I was calling a shelter hotline asking, did they think that this was abuse? This is what happens.
So would you say that them then reflecting that back to you was what was kind of the like a wake up call?
Yeah, it was a wake up call. And I remember on the phone saying, well, I know a lot of women have it way worse. I already know, because I remember from when I used to work in community mental health. And she kept saying to me over and over again, what you're telling me is just as bad as anything else I've heard. What you're telling me is just as bad as anything else I have heard. Right. And she kept repeating that. And we were on the phone for 2 hours. And
Mm,
at some point, I realized, I think that I can't trust my thoughts right now, and I'm going to have to trust somebody else's perception of what's going on. And so, and that's when I was like, I have to go home. I gotta go.
mhm. I
That's
have a
amazing.
two-part question.
Hmm.
One as it pertains to you, so maybe more of a personal answer, but then more like globally, because obviously now you live this beautiful, abundant life, you're making changes in the community, you have this business. So why do some people transcend and heal and some people don't? And you might have an opinion from your experience, but also if you wanted to share maybe for just like an overall, like why.
Yeah, yeah. I love that question. That's a really great question. I'm going to share from my own personal heart. This has got nothing to do with anything I do outside of this. Um, I've learned in my life that the worst things that could ever possibly happen to you have the potential to be the most profound moments of spiritual growth if you decide that that is how it's going to be. And there are different phases of our healing journey. Okay. So understand that at that time, when I was laying in bed covered in blood, I would not have been like, this is going to be a really spiritual moment for me one day. Okay. That's not that. That's about survival. But I think I mentioned before, I lost my first baby. And at the time, I just couldn't fathom anything worse happening to me. And to this day, it remains the saddest thing I ever went through. But I decided to see that that moment was the moment that started to change everything for me, because the minute that baby left my physical body, that baby embodied my soul and became a guide for me and helped me out. And so, you can only ever understand your life looking back on it. You can only ever understand it looking back. But
Mm.
when I started to look back at all the times that I thought I'd been left by God, but I realized I had been held by God the entire time. Every time I felt abandoned, I'd been carried. Those are decisions that I had to make. And I started to just lean all the way in, because I'm not going down like that. I'm not going down like that. I'm not going down like that. And that's a choice that I made. And so, because I have that grit, which is a choice, because I have that determination, which is a choice, I became really committed to using the worst days of my life to help people create the best days of theirs. And to this date, I've helped 5,000 people. But it's about decision making, and it's about leaning in and asking for help and allowing yourself to be humbled and using the experiences to help others. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's what makes you so good, Jordan, at helping people. I mean, you really, the points that I picked up is, and I can definitely relate to this, and I think you can too, Britt, because many of us have been abused, is that we don't know that we're being abused. Like that's what I asked the shelter when I went to Halton Women's Place. I asked them, I said, is this normal? Because I thought it was normal. So I think this is, this is really important that we bring this out and continue to bring this out if we're going to stand across Canada and unify women to be able to take their power back, is first of all for them to be able to ask for help, to trust another person because we don't trust, right? And for some reason, you're right, we just think that we deserve this. And for an outsider looking in, they don't understand that. Like, well, why would you feel that way? And it's like, if you've never felt that way before, then I can't explain it to you, which is what makes you to be a supersonic professional, because you can get in there and really understand what those feelings are and how we call this stuff into our lives. And that's not to put blame on anybody. It's just that some of us are walking around with like, like we already started out as victims when we were so young. We don't know any different. So we're just primed for the plucking.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And if you're in a horrible situation, whatever the case may be, you might not be in domestic violence, but you might have, a real battle in front of you that you can't easily quit. Start to see it as an invitation. Start to see your hard time as an invitation from your higher self, calling forward the best of you, calling forward you to sculpt your soul. Start to see these things as invitations on where to heal so that you can serve. Because that, I'm telling you right now, the secret to living is giving. That is the answer to all your problems. That it's right there.
Mm.
I'm with you on that. That's how we met. That's how we met, was through giving. Yeah.
Can you share, like, briefly, what are some of those phases of healing that someone would go through? Like, is it linear? Does it kind of go all over the place? Do you reach success and then sabotage? Like, paint us a little picture.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something that might be really controversial, and I've come to believe it's true, and I'll die on the hill. There's a lot of talk about the victim mentality, how awful victim mentality is, and I would agree to a large extent because it's very disempowering. However, when people, hello, baby, when people have been perpetrated against, when they've had child abuse or domestic violence, what often happens is that you blame yourself all the time. You feel that you're the problem. So I actually think at the very, very beginning of a healing journey, it's extraordinarily important to start to accept the idea that you have been victimized and you are not the cause of any perpetration against you. And let me be clear, if you are a child or were a child when something happened, or if you have been the victim of a crime, if you've been perpetrated against, you are not responsible. Full stop, the end. That
Can I ask
identity,
a
yes.
controversial just to that? So What about when people say from like a spiritual perspective, well, your soul wanted you to experience that so it could evolve? How
Mhm.
would
I
you?
don't feel that there is enough time to sensitively touch on that topic, and I'm unwilling to traumatize anybody watching this who's sensitive whatsoever. There's a lot of different philosophies. I'm certainly not God, so I could share my own stuff, but we don't have time. But I think that's a really good question, and certainly willing to have a follow-up discussion about that. But to go back to my point, there are times, especially at the beginning of your healing journey, when you have to really properly allocate responsibility and blame, and they need to go in the right places. And that might be identifying as, yeah, you know what? I was victimized. I was I was assaulted. It's not my fault. That's important. After that time, right? You can play around there, but you don't stay there long. Did you want
Mhm.
to say something, Brittany, or are you?
No, 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 I'm just nodding.
Okay. Okay. So after that time, then we get the opportunity, if you answer the call, right? Because you people stay there. People will stay there for a long time. And then 20 years later, you say, what happened? And they say, well, 20 years ago, I was assaulted. And so you live in perpetual victim, not healthy, disempowering. You're experiencing the familiar past, and you're just creating predictable future. But if you answer the call, if you answer the invitation, then you can say, all right, where are there holes in me? Where can I take responsibility to start loving me? Where can I take responsibility to heal this so I can give? Where can I play around with the possibility that even though this happened to me, it does not need to define me? Where can I play around with the fact that maybe this setback was a setup for the best days of my life? Maybe the best things are all still in front of me, right? When you start to play around with that, then you enter into possibility. And then there's lots of, stages of healing after that. They're ever evolving. Of course, they're not linear. Nothing in life is. There are no straight lines in nature. Any straight line you see in this entire world's been man-made.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I love that. That purely right there was about taking your power back. And so we would never want anybody to go through any of this. Unfortunately, many women and men do. And the key to healing is exactly what you say, Jordan, is about is giving. And so when we live in that giving space, we're outside of ourselves, and we're helping others from what it is that we've learned. So we don't take it all in vain, right? Because that is a horrible situation, to take it all in vain and then feel like a victim for the rest of your life and live in PTSD, right? So we want to heal that, and to be able to help others. And hence, I mean, this is why From Wallet to Wealth was born, what, 5.5 years ago, right, Britt? It's been 5.5 years. We're coming up to our sixth gala in November, and it's all about women who have found advantage in their adversity, and how they've stood up, they've fought back, they've healed, and they've used their lesson. And what's really it's the word, I hate the word interesting, but what's so victorious about it is that we have applied that into our careers to help other people. And it is true, living, serving is the number one thing in life. The getting energy is not a good energy, and it doesn't set people up for a good success. But the giving energy, and that's what I see you as. And I mean, that's how I found you. And it took me a couple months to find you. But it was 100% from that giving energy. And I love how, I mean, I love your lives, how you put them out, and how you're speaking to people to help them. So in these series, we want to be able to help people to identify, is this going on in my life, and what should I do about it? Like, where do I get help? What door do I knock on? Do I reach out to Jordan, or do I go to my local women's shelter? And my advice 100% is reach out to somebody. And if you do have a local shelter, knock on their door, because they are highly trained to open the door and help you get out of this situation. It's very difficult, and it can happen again, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, I wanted to just mention something really important. You know, I do believe the secret to living is giving, and I know that to be true. And, but I also want to say that a lot of women, a lot of people who have been perpetrated against, have a lot of trouble receiving. And
Yes.
so just as giving is just so beautiful and profound, you must become open to receiving, because if you're not open to help, if you are not open to receiving, you're just staying stuck in that. So also be open to receiving.
Hmm. That was kind of the question. I know we're coming to time here, but for anyone watching this, because this is going to be on the website, if someone's maybe not in crisis mode, but they've started that healing journey at some point, what type of professional or specialist should they work with? Like basic therapists, trauma therapists, somatic experiencing, like where should they, because this isn't really something you can do on your own, even for the most
No.
self-aware people. You need someone to help you recognize those patterns. So what would you advise to them?
Yeah, you really can't do this alone. And that goes for life. Like, we're wired for connection. There's nothing, and listen, like abuse, addiction, you know, all these trauma, they're all these diseases of secrecy and isolation. And so healing is honesty and connection and community. That's the thing. Absolutely get a therapist. Absolutely get a trauma focused therapist. Never mind trauma informed. Everyone's saying that they're trauma informed. It means nothing. You want trauma, you want trauma specific therapists. If you're in Ontario, you can reach out to my team at London Trauma Therapy. They are the best. We actually are the award-winning mental health clinic. My team is trained very, very well in this. There are lots of local resources at people's different shelters. That's who I use. You know, but it's important that you do link up with a therapist. I think it's also very important to link up with a therapist who has training in domestic violence, which is why I love shelters. They're angels that work there. But don't go it alone.
Hmm. Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing a glimpse of your story with us today.
It was such an honor to be here. And then, you know, if you're watching this and you're somebody who's considering being an ambassador or getting involved, you know, Whitney, I'm assuming you'll drop the links below so that people can get involved. But look, like, I'm proof, Whitney's proof, Brittany's proof. Like, we recover, we go on, we do amazing things, we help, we heal. We're not, you know, we're not stuck at one level. So, you know, if you're looking for the end product, here it is, and your help and your dollars and your energy and your resources make a massive difference.
Hmm. Yeah.
The
And it,
ambassadorship program has been fabulous.
Life changing.
mm,
Sorry. Well, thank you, Jordan. You really, really hit the nail on the head on everything. I mean, it's just you just explain everything so well. Much better than I mean, I just felt my journey listening to you, and I'm sure Brittany felt her journey. And I do know that there are women like there's women that I've known for 30 years and have never said anything. And then through coming to wealth, they felt safe to be able to share and say, hey, this is what's going on in my life, because it is a secret. It's a secret of shame. Nobody wants to admit that this is going on in their life, and they're also worried about the changes that will happen. You know, it happened in my own family. I mean, I grew up with hearing my mother say all the time, "Oh, no, no, you know, we'll lose our house and where we live." So, I mean, we were subjected to, you know, not a very good situation. So, and that just set all the kids up for just, you know, more disaster, really. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, well, secrets grow in the dark, and it can happen to anyone. And there's nothing to admit. You've done nothing wrong. It's just about reaching out and getting help. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Okay, so we'll see everybody again next Monday at 10 a.m. And we'll keep this chatter going. And I know Jordan is open to talk. So thank you very much for being so raw and real, because it's not easy to share these things. And Brittany has been a catalyst for getting so many people to open up and just let the evil out, let the pain out, and take back your power.
Love it. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.